File 4. Chapter 3. The stranger had seen everything. He had been everywhere. He knew everything. And he forgot nothing. What another must study, he learned at a glance. There were no difficulties for him. And he made things live before you when he told about them. He saw the world made. He saw Adam created. He saw Samson surge against the pillars and bring the temple down in ruins about him. He saw Caesar's death. He told of the daily life in heaven. He had seen the damned writhing in the red waves of hell. And he made us see all these things, and it was as if we were on the spot, and looking at them with our own eyes. And we felt them too, but there was no sign that they were anything to him beyond mere entertainments. Those visions of hell, those poor babes and women and girls, and lads and men, shrieking and supplicating in anguish, why, we could hardly bear it. But he was as bland about it as if it had been so many imitation rats in an artificial fire. And always, when he was talking about men and women here on the earth, and their doings, even their grandest and sublimest, we were secretly ashamed, for his manner showed that, to him, they and their doings were of paltry, poor consequence. Often you would think he was talking about flies if you didn't know. Once he even said in so many words that our people down here were quite interesting to him, notwithstanding they were so dull and ignorant and trivial and conceited, and so diseased and rickety, and such a shabby, poor, worthless lot all round. He said it in quite a matter-of-course way, and without bitterness, just as a person might talk about bricks or manure or any other thing that was of no consequence and hadn't feelings. I could see he meant no offence, but in my thoughts I set it down as not very good manners. "Manners?" he said. "Why, it's merely the truth, and truth is good manners. Manners are a fiction. The castle is done. Do you like it?" Anyone would have been obliged to like it. It was lovely to look at. It was so shapely and fine, and so cunningly perfect in all its particulars, even to the little flags waving from the turrets. Satan said we must put the artillery in place now, and station the halberdiers and display the cavalry. Our men and horses were a spectacle to see. They were so little like what they were intended for of course we had no art in making such things. Satan said they were the worst he'd seen, and when he touched them and made them alive, it was just ridiculous, the way they acted, on account of their legs not being of uniform lengths. They reeled and sprawled around as if they were drunk, and endangered everybody's lives around them, and finally fell over and lay helpless and kicking. It made us all laugh, though it was a shameful thing to see. The guns were charged with dirt to fire a salute, but they were so crooked and so badly made that they all burst when they went off, and killed some of the gunners and crippled the others. Satan said we would have a storm now, and an earthquake if we liked, but we must stand off a piece, out of danger. We wanted to call the people away too, but he said, never mind them. They were of no consequence, and we could make more some time or other if we needed them. A small storm cloud began to settle down black over the castle, and the miniature lightning and thunder began to play, and the ground to quiver, and the wind to pipe and wheeze, and the rain to fall, and all the people flocked into the castle for shelter. The clouds settled down blacker and blacker, and one could see the castle only dimly through it. The lightning blazed out flash upon flash, and pierced the castle and set it on fire, and the flames shone out red and fierce through the cloud, and the people came flying out, shrieking. But Satan brushed them back, paying no attention to our begging, and crying, and imploring. And in the midst of the howling of the wind, and volleying of the thunder, the magazine blew up, the earthquake rent the ground wide, and the castle's wreck and ruin tumbled into the chasm, which swallowed it from sight, and closed upon it, with all that innocent life, not one of the 500 poor creatures escaping. Our hearts were broken. We could not keep from crying. "Oh, don't cry," Satan said. "They were of no value." "But they're gone to hell." "Oh, it's no matter. We can make plenty more." It was of no use to try to move him. Evidently he was wholly without feeling, and could not understand. He was full of bubbling spirits, and as gay as if this were a wedding instead of a fiendish massacre. And he was bent on making us feel as he did, and of course his magic accomplished his desire. It was no trouble to him. He did whatever he pleased with us. In a little while we were dancing on that grave, and he was playing to us on a strange, sweet instrument which he took out of his pocket. And the music! But there is no music like that, unless perhaps in heaven, and that was where he brought it from, he said. It made one mad for pleasure, and we could not take our eyes from him, and the looks that went out of our eyes came from our hearts, and their dumb speech was worship. He brought the dance from heaven too, and the bliss of paradise was in it. Presently he said he must go away on an errand, but we could not bear the thought of it, and clung to him, and pleaded with him to stay, and that pleased him, and he said so, and said he would not go yet, but would wait a little while, and we would sit down and talk a few minutes longer. And he told us Satan was only his real name, and he was to be known by it to us alone, but he had chosen another one to be called by in the presence of others, just a common one, such as people have, Philip Traum. It sounded so odd and mean for such a being, but it was his decision, and we said nothing. His decision was sufficient. We had seen wonders this day, and my thoughts began to run on the pleasure it would be to tell them when I got home. But he noticed those thoughts and said, "No, all these matters are a secret among us four. I don't mind your trying to tell them, if you like, but I will protect your tongues, and nothing of the secret will escape from them." It was a disappointment, but it couldn't be helped, and it cost us a sigh or two. We talked pleasantly along, and he was always reading our thoughts and responding to them, and it seemed to me that this was the most wonderful of all the things he did. But he interrupted my musings and said, "No, it would be wonderful for you, but it's not wonderful for me. I'm not limited like you. I'm not subject to human conditions. I can measure and understand your human weaknesses, for I've studied them, but I have none of them. My flesh is not real, although it would seem firm to your touch. My clothes are not real. I am a spirit, Father Peter is coming." We looked around, but did not see anyone. "He's not in sight yet, but you'll see him presently." "Do you know him, Satan?" "No." "Won't you talk with him when he comes? He's not ignorant and dull like us, and he would so like to talk with you. Will you?" "Another time, yes, but not now. I must go on my errand after a little. Well, there he is now. You can see him. Sit still and don't say anything." We looked up, and saw Father Peter approaching through the chestnuts. We three were sitting together in the grass, and Satan sat in front of us in the path. Father Peter came slowly along with his head down, thinking, and stopped within a couple of yards of us, and took off his hat, and got out his silk handkerchief, and stood there mopping his face, and looking as if he were going to speak to us, but he didn't. Presently he muttered, "I can't think what brought me here. It seems as if I were in my study a minute ago. But I suppose I've been dreaming along for an hour, and have come all this stretch without noticing, for I'm not myself in these troubled days." Then he went mumbling along to himself, and walked straight through Satan, just as if nothing were there. It made us catch our breath to see it. We had the impulse to cry out, the way you nearly always do when a startling thing happens. But something mysteriously restrained us, and we remained quiet, only breathing fast. Then the trees hid Father Peter after a little, and Satan said, "That's as I told you. I'm only a spirit." "Yes, one perceives it now," said Nicholas. "But we're not spirits. It's plain he did not see you, but were we invisible too? He looked at us, but he didn't seem to see us." "No, none of us was visible to him, for I wished it